Welcome to Life in the Pit, a podcast about the lives and adventures of instrumentalists within the wonderful world of musical theater. And now, here is your host, David Lane.
And hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 64. And it is great to be with you once again. And got a great episode for you today. If you are a fan of musical theater, I think you're going to really enjoy this conversation. I'm going to tell you all about our guest in just a moment. But first of all, let me just go ahead and tell you that today's episode is sponsored by Fonz, an online scheduling and billing assistant. It is something that can help you if you're a private music teacher, of course, but also if you're a yoga instructor, martial art instructor, academic tutor, fitness coach, and more. Basically, if you own your own studio space and you're charging clients on an individual or small group basis, either per visit or per month or per semester, Fonz will have you covered. This is just a small list of some of the things that Fonz is going to help you eliminate: writing invoices, chasing payments, rescheduling via countless emails, bookkeeping with spreadsheets, and juggling on multiple platforms. That's just a few things. What they say is that they turn hours of admin work into just a few taps of the app. You can do payments and scheduling on autopilot. You can do easy client onboarding. There's 3 automated billing methods. You have online scheduling and recurring appointments. And as Eric Branner, guest of episode 63, said, they even have SEO built in so that you can help get yourself some more clients. And if you're a pit musician, of course, there's a good chance that you are probably supplementing your income through private teaching. And why not make it easier so you're not spending time putting into that business more than you have to? Then you can do some automation. If you'd like to use the link that you can find at our website, lifeinthepitpod.com, or check the show notes for this episode, you can go visit the website to find out more. And also, if you're interested, go ahead and begin a 14-day free trial, no credit card required. For today's episode, I'm going to be talking to Jose Simbulan. If you've ever been to the Southeastern Theatre Conference, which we'll be talking about quite a bit, anytime in the last 26, 27 years, you may just know him as Jose, the piano guy. He is the guy who has, for more than a quarter century, played the professional grade auditions at the Southeastern Theatre Conference, and we'll talk about that. It's a huge event. He also has been a long-time accompanist at the United Professional Theatre Auditions, the UPTA. And so this is just actually a piece of the pie of all that he does. He's played on Broadway. He has played for a variety of other theaters, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But what we're going to really get into today is our first deep dive on this podcast into the world of audition accompanying. If you play piano and you like to get involved in musical theater, it's possible to make a pretty decent income not even playing for shows, if you so desire. I think that it probably helps the overall experience if you have. But most professional companies will want to get an audition accompanist. And sometimes just the accompanist for the show or the music director, if he's serving double duty, might not be available for the auditions, or the music director might want to sit back and listen to those who are auditioning and not be distracted with having to play the accompaniment that fits what they are using at the auditions. And Jose has done this many, many thousands of times and has a wealth of experience on all kinds of levels, but including professional level auditions. And he's going to share with us his wealth of experience. So here's my very fun conversation with Jose Simbulan. So today I'm talking with Jose, and Jose, it's great to have a chance to meet you and to talk to you. Our are you in New York? Is that where you're from?
I'm currently in New York. I spent most of the past 2 years down in Richmond with my dad.
Okay.
But New York's home base, and Richmond's my other kind of home base at this point. So it worked out. Everything worked out for the best. So
nice.
All good. But back up here now, and hopefully staying up here for a bit.
Nice. Well, before we get into our conversation, I just want to, if I can boost your ego just a little bit. Your reputation precedes you. So 2 years ago, was it 2 years ago? Yeah, it was almost exactly 2 years ago. I had decided to go to the SETC, which is the Southeastern Theatre Conference, for those who don't know. And I was going to go check it out. I had a lot of theater friends that, they raved about all the workshops. They said it's a good place to go kind of network and meet some people. And I was at a point in my life, I didn't know how much I wanted to do with theater, but I thought, music directing for something like summer stock or other things might be on the horizon. So I thought I might want to go do that. And as soon as a couple of drama teachers found out I was doing that, they said, well, I need a pianist for my workshop. Can you play for me? And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And then they got me in touch with somebody in the office who said, hey, we need an accompanist for the tutorials for the auditions. And so long story short, more than half my time was spent doing that rather than the workshops. But I did get to do a few workshops. But here's where you come in. So almost, I would say it's not an exaggeration to say at least a dozen times while I'm playing and we're going over the audition, your name came up. It's like, well, Jose is wonderful. Jose will be able to, he'll know exactly what to do with this. And and then there was one time in one of the workshops that I was, that they said, are you playing for the auditions this year? And by this point, I'd heard your name a few times. And I just said, no, somebody named Jose is doing it. And she gave me a look as if I just said Paul McCartney is in the building and said, oh, Jose, he's wonderful. Everybody knows you by first name at the SETC. So
yeah, thank you. That's good.
Maybe we could start there. So how did you get that job and how long have you been there?
This year will mark year 27.
Wow.
For me.
And actually, I should back up. What is it exactly you do there? You play for certain auditions, right?
I play for the professional division auditions, which are the auditions for actors who are available for year-round work.
Right.
So it's usually graduating seniors and then professionals, but actually even for summer stock. So some students in college generally past their freshman year who are available for a full summer contract.
Right.
And just depends on what companies are in the room.
Nice.
But it's, yeah, so that's where that, started. And I kind of got involved initially because I would try to play for the state ones down in Virginia when I was still at VCU. I would play for my classmates or students I was working with in the theater department. And there was like even one year where we had like 12 people from my school made it to SETC, and there was enough support where I ended up becoming a default accompanist for them to go with them to the convention.
Right.
And so I did the whole thing. Hi, you can step aside, and which can happen and rarely does, but it was like there was enough thing just to, if we had that many, people there, we might as well, you've been playing for them, let's just go ahead and send you guys as a unit. And
right.
And so that kind of got me in the door. But the big thing was it was 92 or 93, and I had asked if I could actually come down. And it was that year it was in Savannah to play for some more students who were going down, and if there was any opportunity for me to get other work while I was down there. And they said, well, yeah, we don't know. We'll get back to you. And then about 2 weeks later, our theater office got a call saying, hey, we need a pianist. Do you know anybody? And phone call later, like, oh, you had reached out. And I jumped in that March. It was a very memorable thing because we had snow leaving DC.
Right.
And it was still cold. And we even my plane even had de-iced 3 times because it was that. And I was like, oh, we're going to make it. Landed in Savannah, and it was 72 degrees.
Oh, yeah.
And I had packed for winter. I had, that time, you didn't look on the internet or anywhere else for like weather reports. And I also have to remember to buy like T-shirts in the gift shop because I was sweating.
Right.
But I just jumped in and it worked out. I mean, I played auditions when I growing up in DC for community theater and for college stuff. So kind of second nature to me, sight reading and even working with singers. I was a voice minor. I like to sing. So I think there's a bit of connection and empathy and sympathy and total understanding. I think it's where a lot of my sixth sense comes from working with singers. And I did it that first year and then just kept coming back. So, and then started doing the state more too. So there were a couple of years where actually I would do the state screenings and then see everybody again in the spring. So.
Right. And just to kind of backtrack, SETC, so Southeastern Theatre Conference, I can't imagine that if I have any listeners who teach drama in a high school or college anywhere in the Southeast that they don't know what we're talking about. It's like, because it just seems like everybody is at least connected, whether they actively participate or they at least know about it. They get the emails, they get the advertisements and so forth. But it's really a national event because a lot of the people that... so again, what I did there was basically prep them for taking their music to you. Like sometimes they, sometimes they were well coached and they'd bring in really well flowing audition materials. And then a couple of times people brought in something that's like, well, this is going to be hard to follow. So we actually spent their tutorial not really singing through it, but working on what you need to do. You need to go recopy this. You need to get this in the right spot. But it was just basically mock auditions with us, so that they could get used to that. But there are so many workshops there. But I guess what I was also saying is that people would say where they were from, and they'd say Louisiana, North Carolina, Virginia, Florida. But then you'd hear Pennsylvania. I think one might have been from Rhode Island. It was, it really is a national event, even though it's centered in the Southeast.
Yeah, we have the member states in the Southeast, and then we have just agreements with, people from out of the region, as they call it, can audition in a particular state. And for college kids, they can actually register under the fact either if they're in school at one of the, in-state, but they're, from Massachusetts or from Nebraska or something. So that's how they qualify. Or they go to school outside a region and then decide to come back home, which is where they're from. So they can, they can work that angle, so to speak. So, but yeah. But even just company wise, I mean, we have companies in Alaska, we have companies in California, we have the span of the companies who audition for actors is very much a national thing. So, and SETC is one of the oldest combined auditions in the United States. So there's a, definitely a bit of a legacy to it. And and the fact that even the time that I've been there, I mean, there are companies that have been there since my first SETC. And knowing that's always kind of a cool thing to think about. I'm like, whoa, I think I've been there a long time, but some of these companies were there years before even I started. So,
I failed to write this down before we got started, but this year's SETC is coming out in March. I know it's in Memphis, and it's I know it's something teen, like 14, 15, somewhere around there. I'm not sure.
The 10th through the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, I believe.
Right. So, I assume if you're listening to this, you can still register. You won't have an early bird especially anymore, but I think you can probably still try to register to at least go attend the event, the workshops, and so forth. So probably, I don't know if you were going to audition, I think you probably should have signed up by now. But
yeah, I think the cutoff was yesterday. So for final.
Right. Yeah. Anyways, I was there in Louisville, and I seem to remember. It was in Mobile one year, which is kind of near where I grew up. So it was kind of, that was when I first heard about it, when people were posting about it all over Instagram. I was like, well, I got to try to get there sometime. So it is a fun event. It's actually significant because it was the last major event with thousands of people that I did before the pandemic.
Yeah, that for a lot of us. I mean, and that was one big part of my heartbreak with that, because I actually ended up going to a job right at Actors through Louisville, literally the day after SETC closed. I literally rolled my bags from my hotel to my housing,
Right.
2 blocks away. And then we shut down. But because I also play for UPTA's Unified Professional Theatre Auditions each year. And so I'd done that at the beginning of February and then we had SETC in March. But also knowing, that for many people, it was going to be their first professional contract.
Right.
I mean, I know, actors who had gotten offered, young actors, first gig out of school. And then knowing that was all taken away, 2 weeks later was like, ooh, that when I finally kind of realized that just kind of, that sat very difficult with me. But it was, luckily I think with people did learn to pivot. We did adapt to the virtual stuff and Zoom for all its craziness and time lag and everything else. People did what they needed to do and
you do
kind of kept their skills up.
You do feel sorry for other people, besides what we went through. I keep thinking about, like, I am a composer and an arranger, and I was commissioned by a school in another state who was doing Little Shop of Horrors that had some really talented string players, and they wanted a string section added to the instrumentation. So they got all the books in advance so that I could kind of, peruse the orchestration that existed, and then add, enough for 2 violins, viola, cello, basically a string quartet worth. And then that was supposed to happen in the last week of March 2020. So they're like 2 weeks from opening when they have to shut down, and they're like, okay, well, we're going to try it in September. Well, nothing got rescheduled in September, so they eventually lost the rights to it, I think, or something, and they had to turn it in.
Yeah.
And I felt so sad because I did some pretty good work. I thought it would have been a special, unique production, and they paid me for it, but then they didn't get to use it, and it's one of those makes you feel a little guilty, but no one could have saw that coming.
Yeah, well, even Actors Theatre, I was on the last show of the Humana Festival, and it was a musical premiere. And when things started to get a little dicey, they were one of the first companies who got permission to do tapings of their productions. So I think the first 2 in the series got permission, and we got permission to tape. And like we ended rehearsal that Sunday night. I see you Tuesday.
Right.
And then 10:30 Sunday night. Oh, the governor just shut us down.
Right.
And we had we had sped up the whole production calendar. We weren't going to do public performances. We just going to come in and do the video archive and okay, no. Just craziness. So, and luckily that show is actually having another life this spring regionally. So that's good to hear that somebody kept it in the air. So,
right. I know you have a prodigious body of work as a musician, and especially as a theater musician, and there's so many places that we could go to chat. But I've talked with a great number of keyboardists and music directors on this podcast, but I don't think we have talked about specifically being an audition accompanist. And that is not every gig in theater is for a show. Sometimes it is just for the auditions themselves. And there are skills required there that you don't necessarily have to have if you're playing a show, namely sight reading with a lot of pressure. So the thing that stood out to me, well, it always stands out to me when I'm sight reading for theater auditions, is like, please don't let me be the reason that they don't get their role. I want it to solely be their credit or their blame if they for how they do. I don't want it to be, well, I did a great job, but the accompanist couldn't play the book, or didn't play the right tempo, or kept missing key signatures or chords and all that. So I say personally, I never feel pressure anywhere quite like I do in an audition performance. Now, you might, you might feel differently, because I think I read in an article that was in an SETC magazine at the time, you'd done 35,000 auditions or something like that. So do you actually know how many you're up to now?
I don't know, but but with UPTA and SETC back to back for the 20 years, that's the minimum of 1,500 people each there just in that month.
Yeah.
With February and March, and then the regional stuff I play, the open calls here in New York, everything else. So it's just kind of
right.
And I do shows. I do MD, but actually I like auditions. I like sight reading. I like singers. I always say I'm a strange bird that way. And again, I think it's just, and I know even for here, I mean, it's been amazing now that I've been up here a bit of time, but knowing that, I mean, there are truly actors who I remember playing their SETC audition. Mm-hmm. I remember playing their first New York audition. I remember playing the first show that they finally booked, the Broadway debut.
Nice.
And just, I have a slightly, photographic memory, so I will remember names and faces at least. And that's always just such a kind of cool thing to realize. It's okay, they stuck with it, and and I even when I work with some students, some people have whatever they need at whatever time they get it there, and some people do need a couple of years before the industry catches up to them or they catch up to the industry, and then all of a sudden they're booked like crazy. Right. So they're but that's always kind of the cool thing to me. And what you mentioned as far as being responsible, I mean, there's definitely a bit of that. I mean, I do get nervous, but I think I do treat ultimately my role as an audition pianist as a responsibility.
Right.
I'm there to help as much as I possibly can, the actor and also the company I'm playing for. And, and I will say sometimes I actually get accused, so to speak, of making a singer sound better than they actually per se are, the base level, because I will help, I will nudge, and I do want them to present themselves as best as they possibly can. Right. And
what I was saying is, like, if you're truly at 35,000 plus auditions, there's probably isn't a whole lot you haven't seen yet, and you have that knowledge of that experience. I mean, there probably aren't too many shows published that you haven't played an excerpt from, and so I can't imagine there's a whole lot of surprises now with auditions, and that probably helps the confidence, and you
and I mean, luckily, and one thing I kind of realized a couple years ago is, as much as I buy cast albums and listen to show music, mm-hmm. I don't listen to it all the time. I mean, literally, I don't have like a regular place, and I think part of that is just self-preservation, because I don't want to deal with earworms, but also there is just so much music out there right now. But if luckily with streaming services and YouTube, when a new show comes out, and if I don't feel like I need to invest in the cast album to have a hard copy, and I still do prefer CDs, right? At least we'll give them a listen just so I get the sound in my ear. Yeah. And that helps, and my visual aspect of being able to see patterns on the page, and I can even recognize composers by music layout at this point sometimes, and there is that the one thing I love about auditions, where somebody will look at me while I'm playing for one person and about to prepare the next person, is like, because I have seen so much, I can just look over it. Even if it's not the title page, I know what the song is, because I truly actually recognize the visual page. Right. I'm like, okay, this is it. And then I will ask, well, are you doing it like this? Are you doing it like this? And, but yeah, so even when I don't know stuff, this is actually where my classical background comes in. Because classical, it's a different thing. I do have to read the notes. I do have to play the ink, right, for the most part. So, Schubert songs, 20th century songs, just like that helps me a lot. And that's part of, I think, my sight reading arsenal for theater work, is where that really truly comes in handy, because different styles, especially for an open call for a full season where there's different styles, it's pretty easy for me to adapt to that. So
right. Well, you hit on the key word right there, sight reading, which is a paramount skill for a lot of musicians. In fact, if I was to just kind of cut and paste from previous episodes where I've asked, if you have any advice for upcoming musicians, what's something you can work on. The number of times they say sight reading it's just reinforces that this might be the top skill that most musicians need to develop. But especially when you've got the added pressure of the responsibility of making sure that you do your part for an audition to go well, your sight reading has to be really top form. So what are some things that you do now or that you've done over the years when you're not in a professional situation to improve your sight reading?
I suspect that if I ever truly sat back and analyzed or had somebody analyze exactly what I do and how I do it, right, I would somehow lose the ability. I would lose the ability. It's because, I would, you find out how the sausage is made.
Right.
And there, I know for myself, there's definitely something innate. I've always been a good reader, even taking lessons. I think, I sped through my first 4 lesson books when I was 9 years old because I was just reading it. I wasn't necessarily learning and playing, but I read all the material. I was like, oh, good. You can move on to book 2, book 3, but I will say I spent the past 2 years playing for myself again. Right. I bought a keyboard when I was back home and realized there was no way I'm getting back to New York anytime soon. Right. But I relearned my senior recital from college. I started relearning some other repertoire that I've always had, per se, kind of practice book, both music theater and classical, just to kind of play. And the big discovery for me was also getting some of the analytical skills back that I haven't had to use on a regular basis. Right. And even memorizing. I've memorized stuff which I haven't had to do in 30 years. Right. And that's how come it's taking me 8 months to memorize 2 pages of music. This should not be what's going on. I play better than this. And but it's for developing it, it kind of depends on how whether you're a visual person or truly by ear. I'm not a great total by ear player. I can usually hack something out first 2 or 3 bars, but after that, I start getting a little too in my head with trying to do chord analysis and like Roman numerals and everything else. And I truly admire the people who can just kind of sit down, you can name the song, and they'll roll with it.
Well, you've touched on something that I've told my students before, that everybody who studies music is on a natural spectrum. Some are maybe toward the middle, but some gravitate to one side. So I was that student in college who could play basically anything by ear within my playing ability, and I memorized things almost instantly. It's like, as I'm working on a piece, I stop looking at the music and I've already got it memorized. But I could not sight read, anywhere near as well as most people in my college. But I was a scholarship student, and part of that requirement was like 3 or 4 accompaniment hours per semester. And so they're asking me to come in on week 4, when they've already been working on this music. It's up to tempo. And I still remember the very first piece that was ever thrown at me in that situation was I could have danced all night from My Fair Lady up to tempo, and I had heard the musical, and I was trying to play it by ear because I couldn't read what was in front of me, and I was simplifying all the chords and so forth. So one of the things that I had to do was take a special workshop, on just like how I'm looking at the music. So I've thought a lot about like how to do it so that I can become not an elite sight reader, but a good sight reader, and one who can, do some gig work. But there was another student. She was an older, she had gotten a scholarship, but then she also was getting married, and she had a child, and waited till the child went to college before she came back to pursue her own education. Well, she was totally opposite. She sounds kind of like you. Her sight reading ability was almost at her playing ability. It was like you put something in front of her, and she just played it. But the idea of memorizing something was terrifying. So we used to say, I'll tutor you how to hear and memorize. You tutor me how to sight read. And It's extreme perspective. So that's why, like I can't tell you how I hear things or memorize, and it's very hard for me to teach that to someone who struggles. And sounds like that would be the case of you with sight reading. But I think the one thing that I have noticed, just to go back to the strength, if I don't regularly memorize music, then I don't do as well. It's like
I just hadn't worked that muscle literally in 30 years.
Right.
I had no need, so just had to relearn how to memorize. So.
But I think the same is with sight reading. I think if you had taken this time off from gigs and not continued to play music and just read it, that's something that gets rusty. So it sounds to me like, one of the biggest things that anybody can do to improve your sight reading is just sight read. Just take the music, and if you feel like, well, the best you can do is primer level method book, start there and then go to level 1, level 2, and you just increase the difficulty as you go, but just kind of get used to just not thinking, see it, play it. Yeah, because I think that's the hard part with us who play by ear and memorize, is we think too hard about what we're playing. It's like we're really trying to think of, okay, what does this feel like in my hands? What does it look like when I do this jump, in the left hand? You don't have time for that in sight reading.
Yeah, but I know one thing, I loved playing through my parents had some of the Reader's Digest songbooks growing up, and, it was all kind of old standards, and even I subscribed to Sheet Music magazine. But I remember being early on looking at stuff like pop music charts where, you'd see the chord boxes and they'd have the guitar, and I kind of did that theory stuff on my own, like, okay, it's a C, but and I would see what the notes were underneath it on this piano staff. And so, okay, that was kind of building theory. And, and even when I sight read today, the whole thing, it's, and luckily with college, I actually loved doing harmonic analysis. So, but that is a big chunk of how I will sight read, especially when it comes to pop stuff, where it's like, if there's no chords on the page, or even if there are, if I see that chord, I know what pitches I need to hit, what pitches I should try to avoid. And that also kind of speeds the process up when I know I can't play every little dot that's on the page, or shouldn't play every little dot that's on the page. Right. And, I think at least for music theater stuff, just making sure you're listening to other music other than theater music is actually quite a big thing. I mean, I know there's some pop stuff. I only listen to the pop stuff only because for those rare pop auditions where I get called in, there's so much music, just like, this was number 1, was it? I have no, but just getting sounds and patterns and grooves and feels in one's ear at least once, and just you may not actively study it, but if you're one of those, I know I just remember strangely a weird amount of stuff, and that all just kind of infuses when I go into the thing, and if something looks new to me, or wait, and then then I talk to the singer, and then okay, well, this is what it is, and there's just certain reference points, they'll name an artist, a singer, and that'll just kind of help me if I'm ever in that position where something truly does kind of seem unfamiliar to me.
Right. So, I don't know if it exists already, but I think that whether it's YouTube or podcast, there needs to be something out there for people like me who haven't had cable for 20 years and who, don't listen to radio as it is, but, are hard to come across like pop music. But it needs to be someone who says, all right, here's a summary of the TV show everyone's talking about. Here's a summary of, here's 30 seconds of this number 1 hit from January.
Yeah. I will say, that's kind of what I use Twitter for.
Yep.
My Twitter feed is all over the place.
Yep.
A lot of theater, most of it's theater adjacent people, but the music they listen to, the movies and the TV shows they watch. I had no idea there was that many streaming shows. I sit there going, how much time are you spending in front of your screen? It was like you watched you binged 4 series this weekend?
Yeah. I can't sit down and stare that long.
But that's how I realized I've been keeping track, even with, I don't think I per se keep up on the news, but, I'm a diehard NPR listener. I check the Times every day. I may not go in depth on a lot of issues, but, I do know what's going on in the world. And I think it's the same thing with music and theater stuff. There's just enough, I've had enough touch points and familiarity and read enough blurbs and seen enough clips. And there are a couple of things I will deep dive into. And I'm always in awe of the people who, like, first thing comes out, they will read everything, hear everything, and they somehow memorize it, like, upon first hearing. And that always amazes me. They'll catch lyrics. I'm like, I didn't hear that. But again, I think that's it's a self-protection thing, because I think if all the stuff really was in my head, it would be so, active. And with auditions, after a couple of years with SETC, and then UPTA's, like, I used to play callbacks all the time in the evenings, and that was a different thing when I was trying to work for myself. Right. So I play all day and then do 3 to 4 hours, 5 hours, callbacks for various companies. But luckily, when I got to the point where I didn't per se need SETC for work, I realized it was such a good mental health thing for me after playing 250, 300 people during the day. Mm-hmm. I would leave the building literally, just to get away from that energy. I'd have a nice dinner, but just let all of everything, any songs, any kind of, anxieties and nerves and whatever I may have, absorbed from the actors and from the whole general room. I needed that time to get away. And I'm so happy that I discovered that. And also, just getting older, I just needed the rest. I mean, I think back to some days where I would literally be in that audition room from 8 to 6 and then play callbacks till midnight or 1 a.m. and then have to repeat that 3 days in a row. I have no idea how I did that. I have no idea.
I know you like coffee, so that probably helps.
I mean, but I can't, I will say caffeine doesn't give me, but it's just enough, but it's just like, I don't, how I had that capacity. I mean, that's when I kind of realized, okay, I'm older, and that's a good thing. So,
well, let's mentally put you in that room just for a moment, because I want to give the listeners an idea who have not gone through this, what, like, an individual aspiring actor has to do. So they don't get much time. Is it like a minute 30? Do you remember the amount of time they get?
This year, it's now down just to a minute for the total audition. It used to be a minute or a minute 30, depending if you're acting and singing.
Right.
If you're doing acting and singing, you got a minute 30. If you're only acting only or singing only, then it was a minute. But now it's just a minute for all the for everybody.
So, this is very educational for me. When I was doing the audition tutorials, we would have somebody say, "Hi." They would start off with, "Hi, my name is so and so. I'm from this place, and I'm going to be doing." And the tutor would just stop and say, "You're wasting time. Go, just say name, number, whatever the minimum amount of information they need, and then the accompanist it needs to be ready to go right away. If they have told you that they're going to do the music first and then their monologue or whatever, and as soon as the button is hit, at the end of the piece, they have to be going right into their monologue, if they have one. But all that has to happen, and I haven't been in your room, so you can tell me if it's true, but I have been told that at a minute 31, they would stop you.
We'll get the thank you. And then if it's not, it's like, we'll get thank you a little louder. I will stop playing. There's a little bit of leeway if we know this is the final thing. We'll kind of hold for a second, but but in general, the timing, at least for SETC, does start with the first word out of your mouth, and that does include your name and your slate. Right. For most auditions, we don't require you to slate your pieces just because that information doesn't necessarily help us, and also most of us in the room have heard it before. So, but just, I think for the actor, it's a better thing. Just you give your name, number, and you just go into it. That's your prep. But in a typical situation, we bring 40 people in at a time into the room, sit in chairs, and then the first person comes up to me at the piano. We talk briefly. And again, this is where I know my own experience comes in handy, because I can usually just look at something, or they'll literally point to me and say, okay, we're fine.
Yeah.
Like at the cue line, if they're acting first, and then, we do the audition. But sometimes if somebody's acting second or acting first, I will then look at the next person who's up, and look at them and talk to them while the person is doing their monologue.
Yeah.
And just kind of, just to help keep the day moving.
Right.
And we just kind of run it. And, and there are times where if I will say, hold on, this person before you is doing a bit more, I will talk to you after they're done, then I'll do that.
Yeah.
But this is a big thing as far as making with the actor prepared. If their materials are truly prepared, technically you shouldn't have to talk to the pianist. Everything should be on the page.
Yeah.
And if the actor knows how they're doing it, then again, I'm very intuitive, where you start, I'll find where you are. I'll know where your tempo. I can pick it up from your breath. I will look at, follow along with a lyric. I can tell when you're going to slow down. There's no need to I got faster, slower. I don't need that information. I always say, if it's a ballad, you want me to follow you, tell me to follow you, I'll follow you. That's all the information I need. And then they just kind of do it. So, but yeah, it's just one after the other. Person goes up, they sit back in the chair, and when the group of 40 is done, the whole group leaves, and it's an audition. And there's and just to bring it back as far as the whole responsibility thing, I will say there are times where I know where if I gave a wrong pitch or somehow misread a key or messed up a cut, there have been instances where I will pause. Or after the group was done, I will say, excuse me, but for this number, if the singing was off, it was my thing, because I looked ahead, or I was thinking about the person after them. And I will ask if that person, if any of the companies would like to see that person to go again. Or I will send the monitor out, say, would the singer like to redo their singing portion again?
Right.
I mean, I have done that. And, because if they're going to spend, $300 to $400 to come down to audition and spend 90 seconds to determine the next 4 months or a year of their life, I don't want to be the one responsible for them not being able to get anything from that. And it works out. And it's also been amazing when people are like, no, I felt fine. I still felt good about it. There's no need for me to do it again. Or the companies will say, if they really want to, but we could tell that they're still a good singer, and luckily they're referring to the resume in front of them, so there's still enough information for them to get a call back. And that is the one thing I will stress for actors. And even I think this is where it also helps me, at least with UPTAs and SETC and any kind of combined auditions. The goal for those auditions is to get a call back. It is not to get the gig. The immediate goal is to get a call back.
Yeah. And
then once you're with the company, then you can focus about getting the gig. But I think it's that just a little adjustment in the energy and the focus can actually make it much easier. The stakes are not lower, but they're just on a different level. And it just kind of helps you, if it was, one, if all 90 companies were doing the same show or co-producing one show, and there were only 12 roles available, different story. But, there's 90 companies, there's 1,500 positions available, possible, roles available.
Right.
Yeah. So it's kind of that whole up to the actor. How do they want to focus their audition? Do they want to be in a thing where they will take anything? Or if they have specific shows, specific roles they want to be in, then they focus that audition, and they know that. Not per se limit, but at least they know the companies that they want to work for, and so they focus that audition for them, so they're not worried about the numbers. And there should be a time where people, hey, I got 60 callbacks. Hey, I got 40. Schools would keep track of oh, we set a record. One of our students got 78 callbacks. It's nice. But those students aren't going to go to all 78 companies, because some of them don't pay, some of them are in. But that's kind of just the whole thing. But otherwise, going back, just the audition is the audition, and it's that quick. So there's a bit of preparation on the singer's part just to make sure I can only provide the singer with what they're giving me.
Yeah.
And it just the whole sixth sense of like their preparation and how committed they are to what they're doing, the acting, the singing, the technique.
Right. Nothing
should be left to chance.
Exactly.
And you just kind of do it. And just that confidence, that knowledge, that security truly helps me play better for them.
Right.
Because I'm just riding that energy. And because it's those times where I'm trying, like, what are you doing? That's when it gets strange. And sometimes I will second guess either way, too hard or too little.
Right.
And then then it gets a little wonky. So,
well, let's branch this out a little bit. So I know we've been talking about professional level auditions, but I'm sure that with all of your experience, you've also played for, amateur, like community theater and where there are things that actors can do that make your job easier, and there's things that they can fail to do or do that make it harder. And that's when, of course, they bother to bring in accompaniment. The last show that I auditioned for an amateur group, I think one person brought in accompaniment, everyone else had a track, and it just kind of depends on whether or not the company, what their policy is for that show. Yeah. I have done some shows recently where it's like, don't bring any tracks. You need to bring in music. If you don't bring in music, we're going to sing Happy Birthday or the Star Spangled Banner or something like that. And what are some things that you would advise for actors that would just, regardless of the length of it, that would help you as an accompanist?
And make friends with the pianists. There are more pianists out there than you would know.
Right.
Could be neighbors, could be somebody at church, somebody at school.
Right.
Two of my biggest things are, the first words out of your mouth to me should not be, "I'm sorry, ... Right. I don't have a better copy." And related to that is like, I've never heard this before. Could you play something for me? I should never be the first person to play your music for you. The audition pianist. If this is truly the first time that you're rehearsing it, then it's the first time I'm playing it too. So I think as soon as you pull back and look at that objectively, just logically, that does not make sense.
Right.
But, the number of times where people said, "Oh, yeah, no, we looked and we actually found a pianist because somebody at church or my friend's sister actually happened to play and they were able to read this." Or if, even if you're kind of pursuing something at the community level, amateur level, regularly, find a piano teacher in your area, pay them for an hour of time, and they can actually go through your book with you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of a cool thing because they're not part of the circuit. They will actually truly treat it as like not being creative or trying to add coaching, but just the whole, does the music stay up on the piano?
Yeah.
Is this reasonable? Is this a good copy? And a lot of that stuff is what can get in the way. But there are more people out there. Every time people say like, "Well, I don't know a pianist."
Yeah.
But if the company is providing pianists, then that's at least somebody in that area that there's one there. It does take a little effort, and you just kind of got to make friends and just ask questions or look at places where, oh, that's right. If you are with a church and there's a pianist there, hey, do you happen to play theater music?
Right.
Or if you have, 15 minutes, could I pay you for your time? And could you just look at these, songs for me and just see if this is readable, playable, if this is in my key.
Yeah.
And it's that whole thing. And with companies, some of them are getting a bit better about it now where, as they build their own arsenal of musicians, they make those names available to anybody possibly coming in. Some companies now do like little free coaching audition sessions like you did for SETC for community theater. Like, hey, by the way, if you'd like to go over your stuff, we're making this available the 2 days before, or we're putting something on our website. If you'd like to reach out to the pianist in advance, here's information number. It's up to you to cover their, if they do charge. And that's kind of a really great thing. And, and that's been the nice thing with the one nice thing with that over the past years, and even the way Equity has kind of adapted with making virtual auditions available and requiring tracks to be provided for initial calls. If a person does not have ready access to a pianist, 1 or 2 songs are provided as part of the audition packet, and they can use the track for their audition. So
okay, I was just thinking of a list of some things for score prep that I think that actors need to consider, and you can let me know if you have anything to add or if you want to clarify this. So one of the things that really helps is if we're not having to turn pages. So if you've got a 2-page, if 2 pages is great, just lay it out left and right. Yeah. And if you do 2 pages, don't double cite it. I've had people give me 2 pages and I have to flip it over, and also anything that you have to turn needs to be in a notebook, because if you've got to flip the page, it's just probably going to end up on the floor, So that's a thing that I'll say. I think generally speaking, it's a good idea to photocopy, but make sure it's a good copy, because the more you can mark up your music, the better. Like, where do you start? Where do you finish? I love it when people have taken, a scrap piece of paper and completely covered up what I'm not playing. It's like everything I see, I play. So that's a kind of a good idea. If there's repeats, I guess there's 2 ways to do it. Is make sure that it's really clear, circled, repeating, and otherwise maybe even just recopy the section and have it go linearly, it's the next thing you see. Oh, yeah, transpositions. So I think a lot of us have some experience that if something's in key of G and they want it in the key of A, or they want it in the key of F, depending on the complexity, it's probably not a big deal. But I don't think that's a good thing to anticipate that your accompanist will be able to do with any degree of proficiency. So I would say bring in the key that you are going to play and have tested it in advance, so that there's, what is it, musicnotes.com. It's like you can find almost anything you want to get there, and print it in the key you want.
Yeah, I mean, that's the nice thing with the digital stuff, and hopefully the transposition doesn't get wonked about by the computer stuff. And I will say that's one nice thing with Music Notes. But when Sheet Music Direct switched to their new thing of delivering by PDF, and now all transpositions and printouts are for the same price. There's no additional charges. So once you have the file, you can just kind of go back into your library and do it to your heart's delight. And on the iPad app, it actually comes in amazingly handy if I'm running through one song and I know I need to try it in different keys for whole different singers. It's just like hit the gear button, different key, and I'm set, rather than trying to do all the math in my head at the time.
Right.
But again, and that's one of the things, hopefully once you print it out, or even if you people forget that you can actually play the audio online on those digital sites. So if you need to check the key, you can actually sing along with the sample on the site. And that's a tremendous help, even just that much. And I know with some of the sites, actually, there's even options for more per se professionally styled accompaniments of the sheet music, rather than something just kind of playing it metronomically and according to notes on the page, where it sounds musical, and it's a kind of a good way to do it. And there's also lots of sites and YouTube and accompanists who set up websites for accompaniment tracks, for lots of stuff is accessible right now.
Right. Also, for the accompanists who haven't seen this a whole lot, if people are going to Music Notes, or if they're getting what I call the piano, vocal, guitar arrangements, out of a pop book, then you probably want to be aware that almost everything they're singing is in the piano part. It's like the melody's doubled down there, and that's not how it would be in the show most of the time, So I sometimes will just ask real quick, do they want me to play the melody, or can I just play the chords and so forth? And again, hopefully they've checked that out.
and then there are the singers like, hey, I get a little nervous. Can you help start me off?
Oh, yeah.
Just to make sure I'm on pitch. And then I'm more than happy to do that. There's nothing wrong with asking that. It's nerves. Right. Auditions are a weird beast. And yeah, if you need the first pitch as well, just to make sure you're there, I'm more than happy to do it. I'm also more than happy to like make sure you get back on track if you get it.
Right. And also one more thing for the actors, talking about pages, we want to avoid page turns. So if there's more than 2 pages, I think what a lot of actors do this really well is tape pages, like sometimes in an accordion fold where it just kind of folds out as needed. But generally speaking, I think it's a good idea if your accompanist only has to put their hands on the keys once they start and doesn't have to touch the paper. That's always best. Sometimes it may not be avoided, especially if you've got a sheet music source. I do remember, I think you said this in this article, be careful that you actually bring in piano music and not the vocal score, which is just the vocal line of music. And people brought that in with no chord symbols, and I'm like, well, I'm going to make up something. It may not be what you're expecting, but this is great. We could keep on going on this, because this is something every 99.9% of actors have to go through this before they get the show. There's maybe a select few that get asked on reputation to be, in a show without having to go through this process. So it doesn't matter if we were talking about community theater, high school, college, or Broadway and so forth. Now, but so it's such an important topic, and like I said, we're almost out of time, and we haven't talked about any aspect of your career other than being an audition pianist. But you have done a lot of shows. You've played on Broadway, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So what are some of the shows you've done?
Well, my debut was the ill-fated Lestat, the Elton John Anne Rice. But we did the recording, got my recordings somewhere still stuck in some vault. But then I was with the Revival of Chorus Line for a bit. I'd subbed in on 2 of the keyboard parts. Also did all the Cassie camps, so to speak. I worked with Bjorkley, the choreographer, and other projects, and so she brought me on board for that. I was with Mary Poppins for a while, training Janes and Michaels, which was an amazing process. Nice. Because those 2 actors are on stage the whole time. They actually get a full 4-week rehearsal process, a full cast put in with the set. I mean, that's pretty amazing. And you realize, no, they're on show 92% of that time. Wow. So they actually have to, you think, Bird and Pop and LeMary, it's like, no, the kids are there. Right. And because they're having to navigate set pieces and things going up in elevators, is like, it was safety concerns. And then just kind of a bunch of regional stuff here and there. And I was based in DC and still kind of go back every once in a while. I was at Arena Stage for a while. I would do stuff when the tours would come to the Kennedy Center, National Theater. But I'm a good chunk of my work right now has just been kind of, luckily, it's coming back, is audition work. I do like it. And I like the day job aspect of it, because I can actually see my friends in their shows. Right. And I've had a long-standing relationship with Disney Parks and Cruise Line. I actually just finished a couple of days with them here in New York. And 25 years, when they come to New York, or if they're at SETC where I first met them, and I sometimes will play for them in Chicago or LA. They'll call, and if I have to be there, I'll do their calls for their shows. And but it's been good. And, it's not that they don't turn down, I'm actually about to go down to Florida for a contract in a couple of weeks. Okay. So, a lot of the Broadway stuff is, a lot of New York stuff is mainly auditions and regionals. And luckily there's a couple of casting offices that I have really great relationships with. One that was my first New York call in 99, who still hires me regularly, and it covers my rent. I mean, that's the whole, that's a luxury. I mean, I do 2 or 3 days and the rest is kind of saved gravy. And as I'm getting older and with family stuff, it actually is nice to have the time, checking on family, checking on friends, to travel, again, to see friends in their shows here in New York or elsewhere. I mean, I will fly to St. Louis to see a friend in a production, just like if I have the opportunity. and in Chicago a lot. And that's all coming back again. And I just like being a musician. I mean, that's the whole regard. I don't separate my music, my theater and my classical work, so to speak. I don't do much as classical, but I love art song accompaniment. I love chamber music and vocal recitals, and go to a lot of, actually, I will see more classical concerts in New York than I do shows.
Right.
And it's nice to be reminded that also keeps my fingers honest. I mean, that's going back and learn, like, oh my gosh, okay, I can't fake this part. I have to play this stuff. And yeah, so where I'm right now, it's if as long as I'm making music and be able to collaborate with people, whether it's just one-on-one for 60 seconds to 90 seconds at a time, or with a group, with a full company of 20 to 30 people. That's, I've had the Broadway gig, and I come back, and that was kind of cool, and I learned a lot of stuff, even those very short 8 weeks that we were open. The community up here, and just you make friends very fast. You learn a lot of names, and you do get to hang out. So, and the companies, and this just actors are great. I mean, that's been the really beautiful thing the past week. Was it was our first time back in the room. It was the actors' first time back in the room in person for auditions. And just realizing how at this point it is truly new for everybody in the room on both sides of the table. And just when I try to write something later, but please extend yourself some grace and extend it to us, and we're extending the same thing to you. We know it seems like a new thing right now. We're out of practice of interacting personally. So a lot of people are complaining, hey, I just finally got in and I messed up. Like, no, you're fine. You're fine. The people behind the table are going through the same thing, because we don't, we have to keep our masks on up here right now, and then singers can take them off if they're comfortable. And so there's still that bit of, we're navigating this whole thing. And again, it does feel great. It's that it is coming back, and hopefully there's not another Greek letter of the Greek alphabet in our future.
Oh yeah, that's true. So if listeners, if you're at SETC, seek out where the auditions are. Hopefully you are auditioning yourself, and say hi to Jose when you're there. The last thing I just wanted to point out is I've gotten to know you a little bit through one of the groups on Facebook, and I'm connecting something you said earlier with what I've noticed on Facebook. You said that you like to stay informed. You're an NPR guy, and you also do the New York Times. I don't think anybody on this group is more informed in what's going on in the world of musical theater than you. It's like you seem to have all the resources if there are rights being released or any kind of news, So
that's just enough me scanning enough Playbill headlines and stuff, or okay, this happens. And I used to be a sheet music buyer, so that whole aspect of it, that was my day job for a music store. So knowing publishers. And I used to have friends who work. I still have friends who work for licensing companies. So I don't per se get inside information, but I'm on the newsletters, and it's that information is out there. It's not a secret, and that's one thing I do try to communicate. No, regular people can go to MTI's website. You can go to Concord's website. It's not behind a paywall. You can find out who's licensing this. It's like that still amazes me. Like, people, no, you have just as much right to go to the website than your producer does. If you want to find out what the instrumentation, orchestration is, it's not a secret any longer, and it's so much more accessible now that it's on the internet rather than waiting for that catalog to come in, every 18 months.
Oh yeah,
I do miss the catalogs though. So
little Google search tip: if you're an amateur theater and you want to put on a show, type in the name of the show and rental materials. It'll almost always bring you to one of the sites where you can go find out that information. So last question, is there a place where people can connect with you or find out more about you or follow you online?
I have a long dormant blog, but which I actually may start getting up again. But otherwise, Twitter and Instagram are kind of my favorite things. It's all Jose S Piano, one word, J, first name, last initial, Piano. not piano, as some of my students once thought I was Italian. Like, because I had vanity plates that were J Piano, and they went, oh no, it's JS Piano. Right. But it's Jose S Piano, Twitter, and I will warn you, if you check out that, there'll be a lot of stuff about New York. There'll be a lot of stuff about food.
Okay.
Luckily, with visiting cities, I joke, after the first or second time they're on tour visiting, it does become about the food. And I have there's a big crossover with Broadway people in restaurant and food business. Nice. And so that I put that to good use when I travel. And and again, as I mentioned with SETC work, I finish the day, I will making sure I will have a wonderful meal after I'm done playing. So I do a little bit of legwork, or if I know friends, I get recommendations. And you'll get bits of everything. And then just depending on the day, sometimes you'll get theater stuff, sometimes you'll get other things, but feel free to there. And if you DM me and etc. So
are you going to do the Memphis barbecue thing, or do you have something else in mind?
Well, because I'm just in Memphis, I've been in Memphis every year for the past 20 years, and I did a couple tour stops there. I do the Memphis stuff. My big thing with Memphis is Gus's Fried Chicken. Oh. And the home, their home thing is there. And then it's a matter of, like, do you do rendezvous for ribs? Do you do Corky's for the pulled pork? Do you go Central for them? Yeah, there's a whole thing. There's also an amazing small business, Makeda's, really wonderful butter cookies. Oh, and wow. That's and they finally opened one closer to downtown. There used to be one by the airport, and we would make special trips just to get boxes. But it's kind of walkable from the convention center, and there's luckily that whole strip of things along Main Street has kind of rejuvenated itself over the past 2 years, and it was really nice. Dinstall's is the local candy maker chocolate shop, and they have a shop down there now. They do chocolate covered grapes. Oh. They also do covered raspberries and strawberries, but fully enrobed, so like it's real fruit inside, and it becomes its own gel as it sits there. But the grapes were discovered like my first trip back there 20 years ago. Wow. You don't think it's like, it's like, if you like chocolate covered raisins, or if you don't like chocolate, you will probably love chocolate covered grapes, and they sell them refrigerated. So they're very, but there's lots of stuff to do. Hot fudge pie. Yeah, there's a whole, I think I did a blog about where to eat in Memphis, but if you need to know where to eat while you're in Memphis, feel free to contact me. I will have plenty. Right. I even have chef friends down there because I've been down there so often. So nice. One of them just opened a new place, which is Basque cuisine. So I need to try out. So right.
Okay, excellent. I'm sorry I will not be there myself this year. It didn't work out, but I hope you have a good time. And I hope this I hope this COVID era audition format goes well, and that you're still able to have a good time, and the actors are able to have great success. So,
and one thing just one thing for pass on, if there are any college teachers listening to this and happen to be at SETC, you are allowed in the podium room as an educator. If you just want to observe a couple groups, we'll let you in between people auditioning. But if you want to look in that, just see what it is, you are welcome in both the podium room and in the college audition rooms. You do have that thing as your thing. And I think that's a great thing for people to observe if they are able to. So.
All right. Well, this episode should be coming out in 2 weeks from the time we're recording. So that should be February 25th. So that'll put you about 2 weeks out from SETC. So good luck to everybody involved. And Jose, thank you for taking time to chat with me today.
Oh, thank you, David. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for reaching out.
And that wraps up episode 64. Jose shared with me after we were done recording that he has a blog. It hasn't been updated in a while, but it is full of some stories of being at the audition bench. He calls it the view from a piano bench. And his blog is josepiano.wordpress.com, and that will be included in the show notes, along with, once again, a link for a free trial at Fonz. We thank them for being our sponsors today. It's been a while since I've made this request, but if you haven't done so before and you listen to this via Apple Podcasts, please leave a rating and review. It just helps us to be seen. And any contribution you could leave in that regards is very very much appreciated. Okay, I am working on the next episode. I have an interview lined up and should have a new episode for you in exactly 2 weeks. Going to be on a subject that will apply to anybody in the pit, and quite a few of you not in the pit. I think you'll be very interested, so I'll just leave it at that. Check back in 2 weeks. Should be on March 11th that I'll bring you episode number 65. As a reminder, if you want to follow what's coming up next, be sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook at Life in the Pit Pod. You can follow me on Instagram at David Lane Music, or on Twitter or Facebook at David M. Lane Music. And as always, a special thank you to Mark Parolo for his cover art and to Bill Cisna for providing the introduction to this podcast. The theme music is composed and performed by David Lane. You can find out more about this podcast, leave feedback, or donation at lifeinthepitpod.com. Please rate and review on the Apple Podcasts app, and please share with your friends. Thank you for listening.